Episode 8. This one really brought some of the tightest choreography and animation sequences we've seen in a Dragon Ball TV episode. In the past, you would get maybe one standout scene that lasts for about a minute, and the rest of the episode then just returns to standard Dragon Ball action. But with a much better schedule than anything in the past, Z, Super, whatever, these episodes had far more time in the oven, so you just get back to back, one great scene after another for about 6 minutes straight. But it's also how it still manages to mix all the different eras of Dragon Ball's action together. On one hand, you might have the more direct, hand-to-hand combat with the power pole and weapon-based action like in the OG Dragon Ball series, and for one Z movie. But at the same time, you have the more fast-paced action built around rapid ki attacks, transformations, beam struggles, and stare-downs that became so common with Z and GT. However, it never falls into repetition or something used to pad out time, like ki attacks being spammed over and over again, or white effects appearing in the sky for about half an episode. Everything feels intentional. You still might have a big beam struggle at the end, but it serves a purpose. There might be a classic stare down, but it doesn't drag on for about half the episode. It really is a mix of all the best aspects of Dragon Ball's action, and we are only 8 episodes in. But to the actual animation breakdown. This episode, they just go straight into the fighting. And the first section is presumed to be by Yohei Sasaki from Studio Wish. And I know I already gave him an intro in the 3rd episode breakdown, but I'll do it again. This is someone who's been animating since the early 2000s, working on Full Metal Alchemist and Samurai Champloo, but especially Gintama for about 15 years. And when it comes to hand-to-hand and weapon-based combat, it's like second nature to him at this point. He's just so experienced with it, and that definitely comes through. So right from the get-go, just the weight of this hammer is expressed so well. Widely spaced drawings at the start, then tighten it, that slows the pace down. Like the Tamagami is really having to use a lot of strength to pull this back. Then, as it comes around, the center of gravity of this object is all in this area of course, and so naturally gravity and the weight is going to kick in quick as it shifts, so to show that there is this like sudden wide space again between the drawings, which gives that quick snap at the end, as well as a collection of effects like camera shakes, smears, speed lines, and all these small sparks circling around. And you know what makes a battle intense is if the opponent feels like a threat, and it's done through so many little visual cues. Narrative, after all, can only do so much heavy lifting, so you also have to show it. And that's perfectly displayed a few seconds later. This layout is perfect. The size of the character in proportion to Goku makes him feel truly enormous, and Sasaki is consistent in making this weapon feel like a threat. Again, same formula as before, long hold in anticipation, quick snap, then another long hold, then it comes down again. Also clever use of the environment by the director Kazuya Kurosawa, using the broken rocks that have been pushed into the air and using that as something for Goku to launch off with. And the slow motion, the pole is like right at his eyes, and at the last possible second, and there's that sudden snap. Nice bit of suspense. And this is a good example if you're confused by what I mean when I talk about the animation principle of spacing. You can see how there's like barely any distance between each new drawing of the pole. It's super tight here. Timing is on 1, so there's a new pole drawing every frame. It's also uniform, which means it doesn't change frame rates, like it suddenly does when the Tamagami dodges. Unexpectedly though, he just straight up chucks that thing at Goku. But what was more surprising is how he can actually control it, which adds some variety and fun to the battle. And such a cool idea to have Goku jump up on it and literally ride it, and you'll see this throughout the whole battle. Kazuya Kurosawa definitely makes use of the environment and literally everything else around, like Goku running across the wall for example, which suddenly reminded me of Krillin in Z Movie 2. But anyways, back to the GOAT Sasaki, some really solid camera movement, which is something I'll be saying a lot because there is so much of it throughout this whole fight sequence. I think a lot of non-animators don't realize the increase in difficulty in animating when you're rotating the camera around and having to draw in a variety of low or high angles, compared to a scene like this with a static camera, to something like this. Or this. It's why you would usually see stuff like that more in the movies or openings. Back to Sasaki, he never fails when it comes to posing, so in this cut you have two masses of weight, the Tamagami's body and the hammer, and posing is so important to express that. You can really feel the directional force shooting out from his shoulder, and just really strong momentum to the movement, and a lot of strong intense motion to Goku through how he smears him out with speed lines and this massive spread of color with this textural quality of like a pencil. It's pretty much exactly how a lot of Dragon Ball animators in the 80s and 90s would take to express a really quick action. Goku goes for then another hit, good impact through the drawings and zoom in, then he runs across for the Tamagami to then bring in a quick jab with the pommel, then a really big hit. Goku is like glued to this thing with how fast he's swinging it before throwing him off. But then there's this sudden, crazy good cut of Goku launching under his legs. That wow factor you get from this cut is through about 3 main elements. It's partly through how quick he animates Goku's follow-up. There's no pause like, oh wow, that was a hard hit. Goku is just straight at him again. And secondly, the dynamism in the angle. It does take a lot of skill and experience to pull off shots like this. And finally, how there's no hard cuts, it's just one long continuous cut. There's a really strong flow. Anyways, Goku gets his right leg off balance and then goes for that weak spot behind your kneecap, which just collapses the dude instantly. A really weighty fall. And just when it looks like Goku's gonna get a clean hit in, an instant block, with Goku just dodging his attack, with then a small pause in the combat. After all, there has been a lot of visual information like thrown at you, so it's an appropriate time for a small break before the battle escalates into the second stage. But that wait isn't for long and it kicks off again, and this was originally credited to Shuichiro Manabe, and I was about to write up why I think it's actually Sasaki because of the thick line work he loves to draw, but then it was corrected like while I was writing this mid-sentence, so I guess I'll ignore all that. Again, just like in episode 3, I really do love the style to his effects. Very old school in the shape design, but also the amount of detail he packs in. Low-key feels like something Shimanuki would do. Now next up is Yuichi Karasawa, and the choreography still remains fun. The Tamagami blasts Goku with some dirt and rocks up to keep him distracted, and uses that to launch into another attack. But instead of another hammer smash, he swaps it up and puts his weapon in front, so this time he has all this speed and momentum behind the attack, making it a bit more devastating, just like smashing Goku through the rocky mounds, before then switching back to only miss again. It's also interesting to see how 2 different animators tackle pretty much animating the same attack. While Sasaki layers a lot of effects and goes for weighty hits, Karasawa is the opposite. He just draws a bit of crushed debris and leaves it there. And once again, Goku is running up the Tamagami, and there's lots of interesting camera movement. I will say it does feel a little strange and maybe not as strong as Sasaki's. Like he will zoom in and out in a very rhythmic way, whereas Karasawa, the camera starts to zoom out but will suddenly cut in close and begin to zoom in, but only for a little bit because it abruptly zooms out again. It makes for a bit of an odd pace, and the same with the movement. As Goku hits the ground, there's no pause or proper anticipation, he just jumps back instantly. It's actually almost exactly like this Trunks cut in Super, so it creates this slightly uncanny motion, and this isn't new of Karasawa. It's been a very common thing pointed out in animation circles of his work, but it is just one questionable cut out of hundreds of great ones, so it's no big deal. And I do appreciate him for making Yamamoto's designs back in Super look much more appealing than they were, so he still gets a thumbs up in my book. Next cut though of his is great. He really does bring that bouncy energy to Goku. He spins on the pole, does a little flip, then launches out. Manabe is then presumed to handle the transformation, and it's amazing. I like that Diamond Staff are keeping with the theme of having Goku's eyes glow first while the hair remains black. And even though it's just his eye, he still makes it look so cool. Instead of a basic shine sort of going over his eye, the effects like seep into the other side and are drawn with this sort of broken pattern. Then these thin, circular blue effects burst out. Effects wise, it's probably the most interesting way I've ever seen an eye animated, at least on Dragon Ball. He then packs in some great impact frames, love the angular shape design. Everything then switches to black and white to give some extra visual weight before zooming out. Smooth wave of dust and wind effects as well. Diamond Staff really are intent on making every time Goku transforms feel special. And this next part low-key gave me chills the first time watching. Goku just like floating there calmly, then just casually backflipping over the hammer, snaps the handle, whacks it down, really well done. It's actually not too different in execution to Sasaki, the slow motion, then some sudden snappy movement. It makes the attack look cool and effortless. Then like before, bit of a pause before we get to the third and final part of the fight. No, I'm not going to count this as their final battle, and in classic Dragon Ball fashion, like I mentioned at the start, there's a good old stare down. Kurosawa also uses it to show the passage of time. The sun starts to sink behind the hills. However, from a visual perspective, it gives a slightly more serious atmosphere as the sky darkens. It's then Ken Otsuka from Studio Hercules who animates his best work on Dragon Ball hands down. I won't give him a lengthy intro because I already have before, but he's probably the second most experienced animator on this fight. His career kicks off in the early 90s, and he's been doing action ever since. And I remember channels like Anime AJ during Super's run sort of expressed how, despite such an impressive career, he wasn't really doing anything to the level of his previous work, and that was a very valid take, and I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting anything out of him on Daima. I thought it would be another repeat, but looking back, I really do think it was Super's tight schedule, but also the designs, because he's consistently been putting out excellent work. But let's actually dive into that now. So some very classic Z stuff straight up with the punch to the camera. You would see Kazuya Hisada, Masahiro Shimanuki, and Naoki Tate, who probably got it off those two. Clean hit as well. Good framing in the layout by using these rocks on both sides to direct your eyes to the main focal point. There is a lot going on in this cut. There's background animation, which adds another layer of difficulty for Otsuka, but also the characters are moving back and forth from the camera, Goku sometimes blocking it out, so you want everything to still remain readable. Goku attempts the back of the leg kick again with a key attack lined up, but he's on his feet, deflects that instantly before getting hit with a sudden barrage, but Goku uses that to keep him distracted while he zooms in. And it then transitions into one of my favorite cuts of his. I know I said it with episode 4, coincidentally a Otsuka cut as well, but I really mean it when I say this is exactly the type of action I wanted to see when I did that review of the opening. It's one long continuous cut, there isn't any cutting back and forth between reaction shots to draw it out, and it does such a great job of mixing key attacks and hand-to-hand fighting together. After 2 unsuccessful offensive attacks, he throws a couple of key attacks and tries to come underneath while he's blocking, but the Tamagami counters it, then he goes on the offense. Goku then powers up and zooms around, the Tamagami is kinda surprised, and Goku uses this to attempt another attack again, before blasting him with a range attack. I love it. Anyways, the Tamagami starts shooting what I presume is a magic-based blast, and then a great old wall run. And I gotta shout out the sound effects, it's so cool having this combination of great effects animation, and then this punchy sound design. Then Kurosawa, the director of course, gives probably the best example of scale through storyboarding yet. It is so good. You couldn't emphasize the size of these attacks any better, like the explosions are pretty much the size of mountains, and the background artist went so hard on those. Then the Tamagami goes for this ground-based attack. Again, look at this composition, great stuff. And Otsuka packs a really nice impact frame in. Also at this point the sky has completely darkened, and similar to episode 6, the time of day and background art helps to create contrast through values to make those beams truly pop. And who better to animate the finale but the legendary Naotoshi Shida. He of course has been with this franchise from the start. Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z, the video games, the movies, Dragon Ball GT and those games again, Dragon Ball Super, even the Super Dragon Ball Heroes anime. He's dedicated so many years of his life animating on this franchise, so it was more than fitting that he would work on the anime dedicated to the franchise's 40th anniversary. And in terms of camera movement, he is the undisputed king. He makes it look so easy because he just does it so much. Keep in mind as well, he animated all of this with pencil and paper. There's no CG assistance for this. And yeah, no hard cuts with him. He just moves it from one arm to the other and right back with this strong zoom out. With all this debris crumbling around, the lighting also intensifies. A strong orange glow covers the Tamagami now. The ground itself is completely crumbling around as these two charge up their attacks. Nice framing. The colors act to make a clear visual guide between the two, and Shida is animating so much here. There's about 22 of those rocky mounds in the background moving, then all the small pieces of debris, then the beams and Goku's aura. Curious as to how long that took him to draw. Then some very smooth effects animation and the shapes, man, just beautiful. Again, the storyboard really shows the scale of this attack well. However, instead of the Tamagami filling the sky with red, it's blue, as Goku has him on the back foot now. And I know Shida's always had smooth effects, but this really stood out to me here. Of course, like always, you know, super tight spacing, then a big long hold on the impact to really emphasize it, and I have to compliment Shida's drawings as well, because this dude is pretty rigid in terms of design. He has this metal dome for a head and this unwavering, unamused facial expression, which makes it, you know, much harder to bring out strong expressions out of a character like this, compared to something, you know, made of flesh and bone. Because you have all these different facial muscles to work with for like intense expressions. And so for Shida to still bring out expressions like this, I thought was noteworthy. Also, solid color design. Orange and blue sit opposite on the color wheel, which naturally creates high contrast, and so just gives that extra touch of visual appeal. Then finally, Shida creates this very fluid motion as Goku comes back, and look at that posing, still hasn't lost it. I am surprised to see his work remain so on model though. I mean, you do have some shots at the end which are pretty much in line with his usual style, but there is some other shots which kind of aren't so much. I don't know, maybe Nakatsuru made some corrections of his own. He's one of the few I could see correcting Shida. Like even other shots like this with the shading, you know, it's of course him, but it's still not as intense as he usually goes, like when shading metallic surfaces. Like with all the little breaks in the shading and the more rugged design, it's a bit more simplified. But that does bring us to the end of the fight. It did honestly finish a little sooner than I expected and definitely had me wanting more. But when you have cut after cut of great animation, I really don't mind. Anyway, switching over to the narrative for a bit, the quote-unquote a final battle being a what's under the cup match is textbook Toriyama, and I won't linger on this section too long, but the music placement was spot on by Kurosawa. This soundtrack in general has been great so far. Composed by Kōsuke Yamashita, it really brings a slightly eerie and mysterious atmosphere. And Kurosawa definitely brings that visually as well through the composition. Some good perspectives here. And I feel like I've been so used to Super Goku, I was low-key expecting something kinda dumb, but no, he knows where that ball is straight away. Even if the Tamagami is using some wordplay. Now, small tangent, I really found it interesting the stylistic difference in direction for two almost identical scenes. The first by Ayakamaki in episode 1 and episode 8 by Kurosawa, which is a bit flatter in terms of lighting. And I think this is why I went so hard in that video to point out how uncommon it was to have rim lighting that is constantly changing precisely to the light source. Like in every scene, like part of Degusu's cape is pink from Boo, while part of his arm is white from the cloud, the lower part blue from the sky, then switches to purple as he turns around, his hair turns to that mustard yellow from Bobbity, with even little bits of his orange clothing reflecting on Degusu's cape, whereas anime most of the time is like this, where it's just kind of not shown. It's also a good example of how important your choice of color is. Just look at the difference in contrast between the light and dark colors here. It just carries more depth. Now this isn't a serious criticism of Kurosawa or this episode, because in literally everything that came just before this and after with Arinsu, he applies all the points of praise I just made about episode 1. Punchy color design, strong contrast with shadow color, it's all here as well. I don't know, I just needed to end my last Daima review with some Kamaki praise. Then finally it's Little Witch Academia time, and the background art is absolute peak. Breaking this one down, whoever painted this clearly has a strong understanding of painting fundamentals like values, but also how to use them to bring our attention to the main subject of the piece. You can see these strong dark shadows here in the foreground and around the trees, and if we go black and white, you can better pick those bright whites used for the center, which of course brings our eyes to the main focal point. There's also edge control. You can see as the shadows wrap around the tree they're softened, whereas this area they're strong hard edges, which makes for a stronger contrast. Very strong textural quality to objects as well. I like all the minor details that have been painted in and what seems to be lichen. It's a type of fungus and algae that grows on trees, as well as patches of moss scattered about. Same for the building, you can see growth there and paint peeling off. it makes the environment actually feel weathered and ancient. And then there's the color design, which gives this area a very distinct feel, but are also just generally appealing. And the same for the inside. Kurosawa just layers everything in blue, which in turn creates its own unique atmosphere to the outside world. There are also other small lighting details even with the character art, like having blue highlights drawn on to make the characters truly feel part of this environment, and I'm guessing this is something Kurosawa added or noted for the animators to add, just because of how they remain consistent from scene to scene. Now for the animation, Isamu Takara is presumed, which is kind of a little ironic because the last episode he was on, he was drawing Boo as well. But anyways, the slow flowing liquid animation is so lifelike and such smooth and striking effects. Kurosawa is also still putting out striking angles as well through the storyboard. I love how even in the quieter scenes, this episode still had a lot of effort put into it. In terms of animation overall, this would easily sit at the top 3 of the best in the franchise. Personally, I would even put it higher than the Tournament of Powers best. I mean, it didn't hit me the same like those episodes, but again, purely from the aspect of animation and choreography and the overall visuals, it sits on top. And again, this is just the 8th episode. Insane. This one really did sit with me as well. I watched it initially in the morning and then it was time for lunch and I was about to watch some J-drama, but I just had to pop this episode back on because I just needed to watch it again. I genuinely can't remember the last time I did that. Maybe for episode 17 of Jujutsu Kaisen, but in Dragon Ball, I think that's the first. Anyways, thank you all for watching. As I said in the last video, this will be my last Daima review as I'm traveling away for holidays in a few days time and won't be back till early next year, and around that time I'll also be starting in a new job position, most likely. Isn't 100% confirmed as of recording, so guess we'll see. But in the meantime, I will have a Soul Eater video that will go live in around 2 weeks, I reckon. If you're unaware, you can actually schedule videos ahead of time with YouTube. And then I'll try and maybe have a short little OG Dragon Ball Shida animation breakdown releasing around Christmas week as a thank you, but I have not started on that yet, and this video has been a big one. This recording right now particularly has taken a lot of time, so I really don't know how long it will take to edit this video. So yeah, I'm genuinely unsure if that will get done in time before I leave. But yeah, with that, thank you to my patrons. Please check out the sponsor and use this code to get 15% off. Link will be in the description and most likely a pinned comment. But most of all, thank you for sticking by this channel. I've enjoyed doing these episode breakdowns, and it's kind of hard to believe it's over already. It honestly doesn't feel like it, but I'm so glad to be able to finish this video series on a good one. What a great episode to end it off with. But with that, thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.